Yep. And I'm glad it worked. It was a lot of fun for me. And I think we'll touch on that later in the podcast. But for now, I think as you and I talked about, I'm really curious to know about your race day because as you know, I've mentioned before, and other people will tell you, like the training is what is really amazing, and it helps change your habits and helps. It's just a lot of fun versus so the race can kind of get thrown under the rug. So I want to grill you on how the race went, just race weekend, what it was like to be inside your head running the farthest you've ever ran, and that's really what I would love to touch on if you're down to go down that path.
Yeah, let me start out by saying the last two long runs I did. So I did a my goal was to do 4 hours, under 4 hours, and I did the 3 hour run, and it went incredible. And then I did a 3.5 hour run, and it was terrible. My left knee was hurting. I was pretty much walking by the finish of it. I ran, I think it was like 21 miles on both the 3 hour run day and the 3.5 hour run day. So I was just like babying the hell out of that knee coming up to the event, and that was just on my mind. On my mind was just, how's my knee going to feel? I think I think I'll ride the high of the crowd and the actual event enough to power through that physical pain. Like I think I'll be mentally strong enough to get through that physical pain. Um, and I was, but that was just like the most anxious part of the whole thing. Um, we This was in my same state, so we drove 2.5 hours away and went camping, and we just stayed at the campground, took it easy. Um, you know, Kids are both under 3, so got them down and just kind of relaxed before the day. And the morning was a bit chaotic because we had to get the kids up earlier than normal, and
Hmm.
get them to the starting line so that everyone could send me off. I get stretched and warmed up and everything. And this is kind of a funny story, so I'll start off with this.
Sure,
I was
sure.
very like mentally disorganized on the morning of, and it was because we were getting our kids ready, and we're not in our normal environment. We're in the pop up. So I'm getting Bridget ready. Chelsea goes off to the like bathroom to get our kid ready and loses track of time. She's trying to get the kid ready as quick as she can, but by the time she comes out, I'm like, Chelsea, we gotta go. We got like 10-15 minutes before we need to leave to get there at the time we need to. So we're running around like mad. We get it done. We get in the car and we drive halfway off, and um, she realizes that she forgot the signs that she made me, and I didn't even know about this at this point. So she made me this awesome T-shirt. I should have wore it, but it says like the Big Kahuna on it. It's got like a Bitcoin logo. It's got my favorite number on the back. It was very badass.
It
I
was
love
cool.
that shirt.
I saw that. That was super cool.
Yeah, it's a so we I'm wearing the shirt. We're in the car. We realize she forgot the signs. She uh she decided to go back and get them after I kicked off the race, but with like showing up a little bit late, that going on, like I'm at the starting line stretching and everything, and I'm just like my mind's all in these other positions. It was not a healthy start to the race, I'll say that. Um, but started
So,
off
so
like
in the midst of all of that, two things to ask. So, what was your sleeping situation the night before? Like, did you get a lot of sleep? And what did you eat the night before and the morning of? Was it like, did you make anything special? Was it just the same stuff you ate for your long runs? Like, how did that, and like the sleep, was it like more or less sleep than you typically got? Like, how did you wake up feeling on race day?
I slept about the same, and
Okay.
it was enough. I'd say during training there was a lot of long runs where I actually didn't get enough sleep, so I wasn't worried about the sleep.
Hmm.
Food, we had, I think it was masticholi. We had some like pasta dish beforehand. No, it was um oh god, I'm blanking on it. We had like sausage with peppers and onions, and then she threw potatoes in there. I don't
Hmm.
remember what I had for breakfast, but that was like super good, especially for camping.
Yeah.
So normal meal, but
Okay.
added the potatoes in there to kind of add the extra carbs. Um,
Okay.
Yeah, and I didn't do a lot of like carbo loading throughout any of my runs. I would definitely say I'd ate more because my, I could eat anything. The fuel or the engine was burning, as you said. So I was just like feeling my
Yeah.
body throughout the whole training thing. But yeah, nothing out of the ordinary for before race day.
Yeah. And that's interesting because the reason I ask is I remember when we had this conversation before you trained, like a lot of time was spent on like, what do I do with diet? Or like, what do you eat before the race? Or what's your sleep? And I remember I told you, I'm like, yeah, like it doesn't really matter. Like you'll find your way. And now it's fun. It's kind of interesting to hear you say, like, yeah, I kind of slept the same amount. I had like didn't really carbo load. I just ate a lot. It's interesting now. Like, do you feel do you feel like that? Like, do you feel prepared for the race based on what you ate? Did you feel like eventually you're like, yeah, I'm well trained. Like my body is feeling good. Like what was it? Did you find the nutrition aspect of it kind of less important as you went through? And then obviously morning of, it's not like you had any special race day stuff. So like anything specific you learned on the nutrition front or anything like that?
No, it was kind of like you said. As I started training, it just didn't matter. I was eating a ton and like the long runs, trying to figure out hydration and like the gel packets or pretzels or whatever. That was a
Mm-hmm.
major learning thing. And we'll get into that when we start the race or when we break down the race. But I wasn't even dropping off waters. I'd carry a water bottle or drop a water in my brother's mailbox.
Mm-hmm.
That last 3.5 hour run, my body was just like shutting down. I was so thirsty. I
Yeah.
was eating those
Yeah.
gel packets every half an hour, but it just wasn't enough to keep me
Yeah.
moving. And with the knee, it was just like it was too much. So yeah, nothing
Yeah.
changed on the morning of. It was just the anxiety of getting there and was my knee going to hold out? So
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure it was stressful in the moment, but like those are the types of things that you remember and like it makes race days unique, and it's just having that heightened sense of like awareness on everything, and like everything just kind of feels it's just such a unique feeling on race day. I'm glad you got to experience.
yeah, we got there and we had like 10-15 minutes to get ready. So it was totally fine. It was just a bit chaotic. And I remember like just trying to get back in the zone of like nothing else matters. It's time to start. And feeling kind of emotional. Just, my kids, my wife was there. We, you know, big event. Just like being able to do it with the family. I don't know why it was just like hit me in the face. And yeah, then I
Yeah,
just like gave everyone a
totally.
kiss and waddled over the starting line.
That's
But
awesome, man.
yeah,
That's really cool.
um, yeah, I can just like dive into the race and interrupt me as you want to.
Yeah, yeah, let's go. So you made it to the race line. You got yourself centered. You stretched a little bit. The gun went off. So then, how did it feel? Break it down from the start.
Yeah, it was a giant wad of people. I was targeting a 9 minute pace, which would put me at 4 hours or just under 4 hours. And exactly what I was afraid of. The hype of the racers and the crowd and everything definitely brought my pace way quicker. Um, and I was using my phone, which is just like a crappy pacer as it is. So throughout the event, I was asking a lot of people what their pace was on their watch, and I found that I was pacing around 8 minutes. And I was like, "Oh, do I slow down?" Like it's
Oh
like
my
it's that
gosh.
battle of you're so amped up. I don't think I physically could have slowed down. Like it would have broke me to go 9. I was like, all right, whatever. We're gonna stick at
Yeah.
8. Feels good. It's like I'm like tagging along with some people. I think the start I found this group of girls that turned out they were doing the half, and I just kind of ran with them just because they were matching the
Hmm.
perfect pace. They kind of um, I don't know. I was like in a wall where nobody was just like running right next to me and everything, so it was comfortable. And yeah, as I said before, like I didn't do a great job with my calories and water intake. Um, during training. And I remember one thing that you told me and other marathon runners is take a drink of water every single time you pass a water station. So that was like on forefront on my mind. And sure enough, every single
Hmm.
one, minus like one because the front of the crowd was very crowded, like the start of the race. I would just take the water, take a few steps, slam it, spike it in the trash, and then keep going. And then every half an hour, I'd take those one of those gel packets and eat those. Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, I mean there was like nothing monumental about the first half, I'd say. Uh,
So in the first half, how meant like I know you said in the first mile you were going a little bit fast, but and it's obviously hard to go slower because of the excitement and everything. So in that first half, how did you mentally like rein yourself in? Of like, all right, Tyler, we have 24 miles to go, 22 miles to go. Like, how did you rein yourself in?
I mean, eventually I got my music going, and kind of just got in the zone, got into like all I care about is running now. Like ignore ignore the other stuff. I was because I'm always thinking of them. I'm like, all right, well, my wife has to get back and grab those signs, and I'm excited to see those. I hope she makes it to the first spot we agreed to meet at, and she's got the kids, so I'm all nervous about them. Uh,
Hmm.
I was more nervous about her than me. I was like, I know I can run. I know I can run this. It's just, is it going to be the speed I want it or not? Um, but I think once the music got going and I got a few miles in, I was able to just, kind of say, all right, today's about me. Let's focus on this. Let's keep this stride and just. I tried to just get in like a mental space. Tried to stop thinking about my legs because what I found is it's like a battle. It's like your body is fit enough to do it, but is your mind. And this is like a common theme over it. Like my mind was in charge for the start, but as my body got beaten down, my mind got beaten down, and that's when you're like finishing the race. You're just like trying to keep your mental space good enough to keep taking those steps forward, and it's just a battle throughout that whole thing. So
Hmm.
once I got in the zone, got a few miles in, I was definitely in the mental space and only focused on the run.
Nice. And how long did that last before you started like having to fight that battle?
So the event was it was down back down back. Um, the
Okay.
half marathoners just did down back, and then we did another loop. Um, I would say all the way until I don't know mile like 18. I felt like I was in charge. 18,
Hmm.
I started to really taper off. Still at a pretty good pace, but it was brutal. I had to just like chant in my head, uh, whatever, just to keep going because my mental strength was diminishing at that point.
Hmm.
But yeah, so I
Did you,
like go ahead.
did you like when that started, was it like, all right, like circle the wagons, like everything I need to focus everything on one step forward, or like was there anything like, well, I know Chelsea will be at this mile, or like do you have any like landmarks in your head that you're like just make it to that point and like make it to that point, or was it just like all hands on deck, put one foot in front of the other?
Well, I'll say this. I started out so before I even got to that point, I was just excited to meet up with Chelsea. And what she did
Hmm.
is she went back to the starting line and walked out with the stroller and the kids. So
Hmm.
I got to go all the way to the end, and then on my way back, I got to see her. So she was like kind of my
Hmm.
motivation for the first leg. And
Yeah.
at first, I'm staring off beyond her. Like I see this group of people way beyond her, and then my dumbass like finally looks down. I'm like, oh my god, there's Chelsea and the signs and the kids. And like
Oh my
Cora was
god.
all excited. She's holding a sign that says "Go Dad Go," and it's got like the cartoon
Oh,
of Go Dog Go. I don't know. It's some Netflix TV show that we watch all the time. Um, and then
oh, that's
Chelsea had
awesome.
her big sign, and it was great. I mean, that like literally just like recharged me right in an instance. Big smile on my face.
Hmm.
Hearing Cora just yell, "Go Dad Go!" Apparently, she was
Yeah.
yelling "Go people, go!" during the whole race. So she kind of got into it and was cheering people on. So that definitely recharged me, and I was still going really strong in that first half. Um, and then there was some people that I was running with within the first half. You go right through the finish line, so you get to kind of give thumbs up to the people that finished the half marathon, and they disperse, and it's like, all right, now it's like way less people. The crowd
Hmm.
I'm running with just diminished massively. Um,
Hmm.
so like that was interesting because it felt like a ghost town after that. Um, and for the
Yeah.
first time, I was kind of running by myself. There's a lot of people I'd ask what their pace was, and I'd pace off them or run ahead of them. But I still felt fully in charge and still hitting that about 8 minute pace after the half marathon mark. Um,
Hmm.
and then I saw the kids and Chelsea with the sign again. I gave her a big kiss and stopped and everything just for a second. So that was super fun. That recharged me. And then it was just like, then it was really hard. That was probably mile 15, and I really had to just power through. Um,
Hmm.
I was hitting up every single rest stop and, like I said, grab a water or Gatorade, and I plowed through my own
Hmm.
stash of those gel packets. Um,
Hmm.
but then they had their gels, and I didn't like them for whatever reason. They just like I was a
Mm.
little afraid they weren't going to set right, so I started eating a banana every so often
Gotcha.
because they had bananas and pretzels there too. But I
Hmm.
definitely think those recharge stations saved me. Um, just having
Yeah.
the water and the veterans like cheering us on. They were pretty entertaining, like jockeying for position to give us stuff. You want water? Go to this side. You want
Yeah.
Gatorade? Go to this side. Um, yeah, and because it was a
Yeah, because
smaller race.
this was like the armed services marathon, right? So it's like that was probably pretty cool, just to
Yeah,
have
it
that
was.
backdrop.
Yeah, it was. You
Helps
just
put
had
things in
like
perspective.
yep, you had all these like tough, army people just like at every station dressed up, um, being
Yeah.
very goofy and stuff like that. You could tell that they were just having fun playing off each other, which you know I soaked up every time. Um, yeah, it was
Hmm.
really good.
So like you said, the aid stations helped a lot. Where did your mind go those last like 6 miles? Were you tapping into like prior training runs? Were you just thinking about like get me to Chelsea and the kids? Were you like was your mind off on another planet? Like where'd your mind go those last 6 miles to help power you through? Because that's really like now that you've done it and you've been in it, like those last six are just like hard to describe like what you go through during that. So I'm just curious to know where your mind went.
I was pacing really well with somebody and even passing people. And then when I did that final turnaround at the like, I went there down there. When I did that final turnaround to come back, there was this girl I was pacing with, and she started just blowing me away. I could not keep up with her, and I just saw her like vanishing in the distance. So I'm I'm really running out of energy. Then I'm just trying to get to Chelsea, which is
Mm-hmm.
closer to the start line, or I guess closer to the finish line than anywhere. But I don't know. I think I kind of targeted people off in the distance, and I just focused on them. Don't let them
Yeah.
get too far out of sight. Focus on the next aid station. Um, I don't know. My mind was all over the place. I was still feeling really good about my pace and my body and stuff. So I had a little bit of, happiness and energy left on that. But I don't know. I wouldn't say it was like grueling where I was just, counting down the steps until maybe the last
Yeah.
3 miles or something like that. Um,
Yeah.
and at that point, it was just, yeah, get to the finish line, get to the finish line, get to the finish line. You're gonna beat four. You're gonna beat
Yeah.
four. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so
Did
that
you?
was
Yeah.
good.
Did you have? I know you were asking people for pace, but did you have a good sense of like how you were tracking to four and like any of that? Was that kind of playing into it as well?
I kind of lost sight of it because I accidentally hit pause at one point at the very early on,
Oh
and that made me mad. But I knew that would get
yeah.
diminished. But also I was using Fitbit, and they don't really have a trailing pace. So it's like, here's your average
Mm,
pace for the whole marathon. So like I could have been busting ass at the beginning and then walking, and it's would have just gave me like false data. So I really didn't
uh,
until I started asking people what their pace was at. And then I felt confident again because I was very focused on the time, but not having no reference was really hard. Like I knew when I started, so I could tell what the pace was at this point. But I didn't
hmm
know what my splits were or anything, or at least not well. So yeah.
got it. So even with like, so then with that as the backdrop, take me through like the last, like, do they have mile markers of like last mile or like
Yeah.
last point two? Do they have anything like that? Like, take me through where you what it was like going through that last mile or the last point, or even when like rounding the corner to where you see the finish line. Like, what was that like? Because that's a feeling it's hard to describe. Um, and
The
knowing that you probably beat your goal, like, what was that like?
So I only assumed I was beating it because I did not have anybody pacing with me at that point in time. But the way this
Hmm.
this path was set up is you start at the track of the high school, you run directly to a bike path, you run a little bit through this like suburban road, and then the rest of the time is on a bike path. So when it really opened up was like when I went from the bike path, the straight bike path, to that suburban road. And this was probably the coolest aid
Hmm.
station too. There was little kids on the block like handing out lemonade, and they had a bucket set up down the road that you could just put your lemonade bucket into, or lemonade cup into. So that was super cute. And then because it's on a road, the aid station is massive, and it's like the last one before you make it home. I don't think it was at mile marker, you know, 25, but maybe 24 or something. I don't know. I think it was longer than a mile is my point. But that
Hmm.
was huge. There was a ton of people there. That gave me a little bit of energy. And then you go up this hill, and then you're running like the driveway into the school. And instead of just going
Oh
straight to the
wow.
track, you you go and do this like extra bonus loop, and then you come back to the track. So you kind of pass the finish line and
Oh
then like
God.
come back to it. And that was like, that sucked. That last mile was
Oh.
really hard. Um, I'm going as slow as I can. I know the remainder of the distance because I've done that part of the run on the first half.
Hmm.
Uh, One notable thing is no one's in sight. I'm running, and I have to like, you go down and around this corner, so you kind of do a U-turn. You're passing runners coming back to the track as you're running to that U-turn, and this girl finishes it, and then or I pass this girl, I do the U-turn, and I see her ahead of me, and she's just like falling into the woods. She collapsed within the last quarter mile or half mile of this race. And there was another dude that
Oh my
stopped.
gosh.
So like the two of us are like, what do we do? And I asked her, I was like, do you want us to like limp you across the finish line? Like, I don't care that much about my time. I'll like document it and just like estimate it.
Yeah.
But she was like, no, like I'm good. You could tell she was just totally delusional. We run towards the
Yeah.
track and just like flag down a couple people, tell them that somebody passed out over there. Um, so that was just like,
Wow.
that was an example of, giving it your all or not drinking enough water or something, because it was getting pretty hot in the end of the day too. Um,
Yeah.
I think seeing that was kind of
Wow.
it was good and bad. It made me not focus on myself, and it made it so like
Hmm.
finishing wasn't going to be much
Hmm.
easier. But
Hmm.
yeah, the final leg, you enter the track and you run essentially a full loop on it. So I come in and I immediately see Chelsea and the kids. I was like kind of half trying to get Cora to run the length of the track with me. Um, I think Chelsea like
Wow.
swatted her off because she just wanted me to finish. But yeah, I
Yeah.
run into the track, and there's actually a couple photos of like Chelsea greeting me in the middle of the track, giving me a big hug and kiss, and me just looking completely defeated. Uh, but it was under 4 hours. It was 352 something. So I just say
Yeah.
353. Um, and yeah, it was
Wow.
wild. It took me a while to to realize it, because at that point your mind turns off and everything in your legs, all the pain you went through just kind of kicks in and takes over.
Yeah.
But it was unreal. It was, yeah, I'm very happy with it.
Yeah. I mean, I remember I was tracking you and I remember like, oh my gosh, he's gonna break like looking and be like, he's gonna break 4 hours. And like I mean you trained hard, you trained for sub 4, like that's what's really I think a testament to you is like you said you want to do 4 for your first marathon and then you did the work and then you executed on race day. Like that formula is never that linear. It's like very rarely that linear of like, this is my goal time. Here's the steps I need to take to get myself trained to hit that, and then I hit it. Like that's something you should be super proud of. That you were even 8 minutes below is still like really good. It's just a really good experience. Like I remember when you faced your challenges on the course. Like sometimes you're by yourself. That can be really challenging. Um, but yeah, at the end of the day, the times last forever. So like you made it through. You push yourself, and that's a privilege to be able to push yourself like that. So I'm very happy for you.
Yeah, I'm pretty. I go in waves of like, when I talk to people, like, you did a marathon, and kind of seeing their reaction is grounding, because I don't know. I think I'm just like a humble person, or I try to be. So it's like, I think calling myself humble makes me not humble, but like, I don't know. Training for it was one thing. It doesn't feel like a super monumental thing, but then you hear how people react, and then it really does. Um,
No,
yeah,
but what you're describing is very right though. Like it's almost kind of taboo to talk about your times on marathons. It's almost like people are like, you did a marathon? Like, yeah, yeah, I did it. It's awesome. Like you should do one. And then it's like you start talking about your time. It's like, well, you don't want to like you know, you want to make it accessible for everybody. My perspective is like, you want to motivate people to do a marathon. And if you're like, I did a marathon in this time, and they're like, oh, I could never do that. It's like, well, that's not what I meant. It's like, you should do one. And like, if you, whatever time you get is the time you get. But I feel like once you start bringing times into it, like, then it becomes a little bit of like, can get out of reach for people. But I
yeah,
totally agree. It's a difficult thing to be like, you did this awesome accomplishment to the majority of the American public or the world, like the accomplishment is the main thing, and the time like is just whatever. Um, so it's just kind of squaring that when you tell people about it is a very interesting thing.
and at this point, unless you're overweight, I really think anybody could could complete a marathon. It's just, can you
Yeah,
complete the training is the hard part. Can you get your body
yeah,
and your mind strong enough to do it? Um,
yeah,
yeah, and I'll just say
yeah.
this, because it's kind of funny. Like, when I did finish, this thing had so many things. They had like, I think it was Jimmy John's. So we went up there, grab a little sandwich, grab your snack, your pop, your whatever, anything you could want, really. They had these like fans that they just like sprayed water on for mist. So I went and sat in front of those, and sat down to, you know, I walked around for a while, but eventually sat down to give my legs a break, and just kind of catch up with what just accomplished. Um, and I'm sure you're all too familiar with this, but the moment you sit down, the moment you do anything, your legs are like game over. Standing and sitting became impossible. Uh, and
Yeah.
my kids are obviously just wound up. They're running up and down the bleachers. Chelsea had to go take Cora to the bathroom, so I was watching Bridget, just like an old man trying to chase after her while she's you know potentially going to hurt herself. Um,
Mm.
but it was great. Like, I ate. We stood up, took a bunch of photos, and then went back to the campground. And being a dad doesn't stop, so I had to just
Yep.
once again power through the pain in my legs that was setting in, and just be a decent dad. I couldn't really run around, but
Yeah.
I still had to like chase them, make sure they weren't getting into trouble and stuff like that. Um,
Yeah.
so that was like super funny. Uh, Yeah, and I mean the
Wow.
recovery wasn't too bad. I knee definitely started hurting, which it really didn't bother me that
Hmm.
much through the whole race.
Hmm.
I'd say it's still a little bit off, but everything's recovered. I was fine after the fact. Um, got this cool
Nice.
shirt. If you're watching, they gave me
Yeah.
this mug or this
Yeah.
cup.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah,
Very cool.
yeah, I do
Nice.
think anyone
I
can do
think
it.
yeah. Well, and I think this segues really nicely into what you wanted to discuss around like the 7 things you learned because you had mentioned like being a dad doesn't stop, and you think anyone could do it, and the training's really the hard part. And it's funny how like that's exactly how I feel. And I mean, I'm not a dad, but I can sympathize with that of like the marathon's just a it's 4 hours of your time on one day. The rest of the time you still have to do your normal job. So I'm curious to see kind of how that's been, how you've thought about that post race,
Well, let
because
me
this
let
was
me
like
ask.
a 3 month long journey, right? Like it was like January you started, and it was like it may have been like 4 month long journey. Yeah, it was quite long.
I think it was 3. I think I started training officially late, but I was still kind of doing some maintenance runs. Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, running training through the winter kind of sucked. There was days I woke up in the morning and had to like run in an inch of snow, or I did a lot of stationary bike runs or rides since it was raining during a lot of that time. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, and I'm excited to hear how you see these like lessons learned because you've done your fair share of marathons. I'm sure you have comments on all of them, but I I sat down
Hmm.
after this and I kind of was reflecting on the training process for this podcast for myself, and I jotted down like 7 things that were monumental that I learned from this process. And as Chris says, the event was great, but the training was the main thing. So the first
Hmm.
thing I wrote down was just better habits. If you're if you're trying not to if you're trying to keep being a good dad, keep giving your family time, keep giving your kids time. Uh, something has to give to make time for this marathon training. And I wouldn't say I'm like an alcoholic or anything, but I definitely on weekends will drink and stay up later than I need to be. And then the next day I'll just like power through. But when you're training for this stuff, you are actively deciding what you can't budge on, what you can, and trying to schedule your marathon trainings in there. So I'd say like I got more sleep, I drank less. I probably went to bed at better time so I could do early runs if that's what I did. It just overall created better habits for me going through the training process. I
Yeah,
can keep
and I would
going, or
tend to
you can
agree with you
comment on
there.
that.
Yeah, I'll just a quick comment there. Like I would agree with you wholeheartedly. Like I am the best version of myself when I'm training. Like none, like bar none. Like it's just it's just a healthier. You just have another thing you have to maintain your health for. That
Yeah,
it's a lot easier to say, well, I'm going to stay up till 1, or like I'm just going to unwind with a drink after on a Wednesday, right? Like it's just like easier to do that when you're not training. And so when you are, it's like, nope, I'm just going to go to bed. It's 10 o'clock. I'm done. I'm just going to go to bed because I got to be up early to run tomorrow. So I
yeah,
totally agree with that.
yeah. And obviously, it's physical training, so you're clearing those bad habits for good habits, and it's yeah huge.
Exactly.
The second
Hmm.
this was probably the biggest one for me. I just wrote down me time. So as a dad, I wake up. I'm fortunate I get to work from home, but I wake up, I help my kids get ready in the morning, I dive into work, and then after work when they wake up, I close my laptop and I'm focused on them. I don't really get any time to myself until, except for at the work day, which I'm focused on at work, until they're in bed. So when I carved out this time for, oh, and even then it's like, okay, we're going to unwind together, Chelsea and I, or we'll do something then. Um, so having this marathon training really carved out time for me to either, catch up on a podcast, a book, listen to music, or just have time with myself, with my own thoughts, to mull over anything, mull over house projects, you know, think about work, think about myself, just really have time to reflect on something. And if you are a runner listening to this, you understand that there is a such thing as a runner's high. uh, I don't know the science behind it, but when you're in that state of distance run, you kind of get this like um endorphin boost, or you get this like kind of high where your neurons are just like firing perfectly. Sometimes it's chaotic, but sometimes it's very focused, and I feel like I just come up with great ideas or have big epiphanies when I'm in that moment, and just like pairing that with whatever is going on in your mind is just awesome, fantastic as a dad.
Yeah. And that last point is huge for me too. Like getting that alone, like time in my own head is so important. And you just think about things and they just make more sense. Like
Yeah,
if you're like, just your mind goes down these paths that you don't necessarily give it the time to explore when you're working and you're just occupying all your time. And so on the run, it's like you just come up with these great plans and ideas and strategies. And like even if they end up not working, it's like you give yourself the chance to explore it, and it just open. If it doesn't work, it opens up more space to say, well, I already thought about this, not going to pursue it. Now I'm going to think about the next thing. And it's like rather than
yeah,
saying like I really need to take time to think about this thing, and then those things just keep piling up and piling up and piling up, when really you can just go through them all when you give yourself the time to do it.
yeah. And you're not. I mean, you can pull your phone out to change a song or something, but you're absolutely disconnected. You're in nature.
Yeah,
You're running.
yeah,
You can't distract yourself in any other way. Like, you have to
yeah,
think. So, uh,
exactly.
okay. And then like the third one, this kind of pairs with good habits, but mental strength. So I didn't really realize this, but marathon training, you're kind of just getting your body, your lungs, your legs ready to run that event. Um, as I talked to more people about this, and as I had my own injuries, my knee being one of them, my ankle in the early days, there's an element of mental strength too. You have to be mentally strong enough to essentially distract yourself from the pain, or make your I don't even know how to think about it. Like, think about the end goal in mind, and don't let your mind think about the leg that's hurting you right now. So you're not going to die, you're not going to break your leg. It might be sore at the time, but if you have the mental strength, you can push through and overcome a lot of those like physical pains. I just thought that was super interesting, and it was very important when I was running the actual marathon itself.
Yeah, it's pain tolerance is like it really helps you explore that in an interesting way. Like I remember you would text me like, "Oh, like my ankle started hurting after that run," and then that'd be on like a Sunday, and then on a Tuesday, you'd be like, "Well, like the ankle's better," and then like you'd keep moving forward rather than being like, "Dude, my ankle hurts on Sunday. I need to take a week off." Like
Yeah.
you did like I mean and I will say if you would have raised an alarm bell of like I literally can't walk, I'm like, all right, man, like don't push through. Like I'm not suggesting like everything, but you do develop the pain tolerance of like what can I realistically push through and what can't I, um, and that's an interesting part of your brain to explore.
It also made me think about my body a little bit more. When my ankle's hurting,
Mm-hmm.
it was literally just because I haven't been running that far, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe I didn't have the strength to tolerate that. I don't know. Before, I probably would be like, oh, my ankle's hurt, I gotta stop. But after icing it, and seeing how it doesn't even bother me anymore, it's just like, wow, that's interesting that just like the impact can do that, and how quickly your body can heal and adapt to that.
Yeah, yeah,
Never once did I think that I was going
resilience.
to break something.
Yeah, your body's resilience is like pretty remarkable when you push it.
Yeah, yeah. I think it has like trailing effects too. Like, if you're mentally strong enough, you're less willing to give up on other things, pain, or
Yeah,
whatever type of torture you have in your life, work.
yeah,
So
yeah. I agree with you there.
the next one is very like straightforward, but I just wrote calories and hydration. I never knew how important it was to keep calorie intake, and I mean I knew it, but I never experienced it. I don't think I've ever pushed myself so hard that I needed to refuel mid event often.
Hmm.
Um, and then same with hydration. I mean that last training run, I was about to give up and walk up to someone's hose and drink water. Uh, so I think the great rule of thumb that you gave me was drink something every aid station and eat something every 3 miles. So I kind of took that to heart, and it paid off very well. Not a ton to say there.
And well, and then, well, I guess one thing to follow up on is on your long runs. So when you're budgeting a 3 hour run, obviously you explored like water and calorie intake on those long runs. So how did you best, like for example, I when I do it, I have a vest that I keep everything in. But how did you best find that? Like, did you run with a water bottle? Did you stash them on the course? Like, what would be advice you would give to others who are like, yeah, I'm cool budgeting a 3 hour run. I just don't know how I would fuel during it. That's kind of scary. Like I don't want to be out there on an island with nothing. So like what kind of advice would you give for fueling during the training?
I bought those gel packs, and
Hmm.
like you said, anything over 2 hours, just kind of take one of those, get practice those, because it is weird. You're running, and then you're forcing yourself to not breathe to eat something. It's just
Hmm.
unnatural. So I would take those every half an hour uh, on the marathon day, or every 3 miles. It's kind of about the same. Um,
Hmm.
Before that, I was doing about every 45 minutes during training, and I was really
Hmm.
bad about water.
Hmm.
Well, I'll say this: I stuffed those things in my pockets. I had like internal pockets in my coats and stuff like that. I didn't have a vest. I didn't have a belt to start out with. By the end of my training, I did buy one of those. What do you call that belt?
Like
The
flip belt.
Yeah, flip belt. It's got all these pockets you can slide
Hmm.
stuff in. So by the end of it, I bought one of those. I could put my phone and headphones and everything in there. Um, Water, I was actually really bad about. I would drink a bunch of water beforehand, and on my longer runs, I would loop past the house to get some more water, or I would run past a friend's house and get more water. I didn't stash anything because I was so conscious of time. I don't want to waste any time going
Hmm.
out there and prepping for it. And
Hmm.
it did burn me. Like I definitely needed more water than I should have, but at least I knew that the race event was going to be staffed and stashed well, so that I had that on the the day.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know some people, like you said, they drive in advance and toss water bottles everywhere, or they run with a jacket, like a vest. I did carry a water bottle once, but I'm on dirt
It's
roads. It
hard.
was like hard to find a trash can and stuff. It was just more annoying than
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
Um, oh, I will say, like every stop on the run, I would literally walk for 3 or 4 steps to slam the cup to throw it away, because otherwise you're just like bouncing, running, trying to
Yeah.
drink
You
it.
lose half of it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then by the time you finish it, you're more out of breath than you were, and you pass the trash can. So, like
Hmm.
taking a second to stop and actually consume something is not going to hurt your time that much, if
Yep.
anything.
It's great perspective. Yeah, it's almost like if you were to miss the aid station just to try to save 5 seconds, you're going to lose 2 minutes a mile on the back end. It's just not
Yeah,
worth it.
yeah. All right, number 5. So this one I just wrote teamwork, and I mean, I'll shout out to my wife. Like she let me clear the time to make this work. Um, I think I partially think she was getting sick and tired of me saying every single year, I have this bucket list goal of running a marathon, and this year she was like, just do it. We'll make it work. We'll figure it out, and we absolutely did. Like I tried to make sure it didn't interfere with any of our time, but she also was like very willing to carve out time and make it work for us. Um, the weekends was always a long run days, and weekends are always very busy. So we kind of decided on a day at a time. If she had to take the kids on, you know,
Hmm.
outside of their nap or something, she was more than willing to do it. It never felt like I was inconveniencing our family to make it work. So it was just
That's
a
great.
team effort. And obviously on race day, like I felt totally supported with that shirt, and just having my
Hmm.
little cheer section to recharge me, making sure I was getting enough fuel before everything. Like it made it easy
Yep.
to focus on the event when I had all my other bases covered, and just like support all around from her.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I know you and I talked about that. It's huge to have that support. And like even in your peak weeks, how many hours were you dedicating to running? Like how many hours would you say that, like, just to put it in perspective of like this is how much I was asking to provide for my running, and you can break it up into like this is how much of like physically how many hours running I did. If you add in stretching and icing, that was that many hours. Like how many hours do you think you were like, and that helps put in perspective like why you need a good team around you to support you, because it's not insignificant. It's not a ton, but it's not insignificant.
the hour runs were easy. I mean, I'll say just say 3 hour runs throughout the week, and then a long run. So maybe 6 hours is like a heavy week, and then
Mm-hmm.
obviously putting aside time to ice and your recovery afterwards, your shower and stuff like that. So maybe like 6 to 8, 7, 8 hours. Um, the
Mm-hmm.
day to day was pretty easy on the shorter days, like an hour run. Uh, Finding a chunk of time for an hour was not too bad. I could either do it in the morning before work
Mm-hmm.
started, or I could even do it after the kids went down. But at that point, it was still kind of dark. Um,
Mm-hmm.
or I could do the like the stationary bike. But more times than not,
Mm-hmm.
I would just dip out of work. She'd take on the kids solo while I did that run, and then I'd come home, shower, and focus on them for the end of it. The long run, thank God those were on the weekends because those almost always
Mm-hmm.
timed out with the nap. So our
Yeah.
kids are both still sleeping. We'd put one down, I'd gear up and go, and then she would just like wind down the second one and put the other kid down. And then by the time I'm done, I can typically get showered and changed and be ready to do whatever we had that night or to just play with them. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and then icing and stuff. I mean, that all can be done after the kids go down. So that was very easy. It was just like
Good.
not burdening each other with these runs. Like, oh, well, the
Yeah.
kids are up. I'm gonna go run now. It's like you could have done that during their nap time. Like just working together on time so that you guys are both managing each other's resources and responsibilities.
Yeah. I mean, because that can be stressful because like it is a big accomplishment to do the marathon and to train for the marathon. So like I'm sure there's people who are just like, sorry, I need to do this training and like we'll figure it out, but like this is really important and I need to prioritize me. And like I'm sure that happens, that conversation happens. And it can cause strain. Like
Yeah,
it's really important to be able to have that open dialogue and like plan out this stuff, and then you feel better about it. You don't feel like on the run like you're doing something out of like you're acting out of school and you're just like doing this and you're going to get hell for it when you come back, and it's like it can add a lot of stress. So that is a really important point of just having a good team that at home that supports you, and you feel like you're being open and honest with your time and your plans, and it's a give and take. So that's a big step.
and this kind of leads into the next one, but I would also say like I don't think I sacrificed any of my social. I probably
Mm-hmm.
sacrificed some of the like house projects I was working on, um, amongst the bad habits, but I don't think I sacrificed any social things doing this. And the next one I wrote down is grace and flexibility. It's like
Yeah.
I found that like working with you to give me a schedule every week was amazing because I would just wake up on Monday and say, "What's the plan, man?" And then you would give me a schedule. We'd go back and forth and kind of like align on something. But if
Mm-hmm.
I were to be training by myself and I were to be looking at a calendar that I found online to train to, that would have been my gospel, and it would have been really
Mm-hmm.
hard to meet that because I would have had my ankle hurting and I wouldn't have taken it easy. I still would have busted ass to get that long run in on the weekend, or my knee.
Mm-hmm.
And In reality, what happened is I went back and forth. We worked on the severity of it, and we were able to move days around, actually not do a long run. I went out to Vegas for a bachelorette party, and we made it so we didn't even do a long run that weekend. So like having the
Hmm.
grace not to feel bad when something comes up, and the flexibility with that schedule to make it work with your life was huge. I wouldn't have even known that that was possible because I just assumed these workout schedules are so strict and routine.
Rigid.
Yeah, rigid, and they're not at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's that is I find that is the best, like that for me, that's my best way to thread the needle. It's like if you can, you just feel so good and so like so like self confident if you're like, yeah, I'm doing my normal stuff and I'm hanging out with my friends and I'm being there for my family and I'm doing this awesome training. It's almost like it just makes you feel good. Like I don't know how else to say it. It's like if you're able to accomplish all your social responsibilities while training, it makes the training feel better. Like I went other than saying I'm going to sacrifice my socials because I need to focus more on this training. I just find, and everyone's different, but I just find that is a tough one. That's a really tough one to live with.
How would you say that your training evolved from your first marathon to today? Like I assumed that when we were talking back and forth, you've done so many that you literally were just like,
Yeah,
I know I get the formula. I know what we're trying to do. We're trying to get our miles up by the end of this thing, and we're trying to make sure there's
yeah,
enough of a rest period before race day. Like, I guess I'm curious from your perspective how it was delivering the training, uh, and not going off of a calendar.
yeah,
Because, like I said, I was just blindly doing what you said in my text.
yeah. So I, when I first started, I was extremely rigid. I was like, I remember writing out on a whiteboard what my calendar for the month would be every workout that I would have for the month. And then the next month I would refresh it. And I was like, I need to be very strict. It was all based on mileage. I had like, I'm going to get from this many miles to this many miles, this many miles. I'm going to eat all the same, like eat stuff that's super conducive to that. Um, and I didn't, that was my priority was like strictness. And I, that was like the first marathon. And the second one, I was like, all right, I need to do more miles, but I'm still going to be pretty rigid. And I did the same thing. I kind of wrote the same, my own schedule and was very strict and did workouts um, and I hit my mileage and the mileage was the signal to me that I was in shape and I was still doing well, still like 3 hours or around or under, but I wasn't really improving a lot. And then I started understanding like, all right, like the key here is the long run. You got to be able to work these long runs. And that helps put into perspective like the week and the nutrition and everything. It's like, it doesn't matter if you knock your 7 mile run out of the park and you do that 3 days a week. Like that's great. But if you can't run the long run on the weekend, your body's just going to give up. And so I kind of switched my perspective in marathons like 4 and 5 where I had to really focus on, all right, how much time do I want to dedicate to this? And that's an hour a day or 3 hours on the weekends. And you need to make sure you can hit these runs efficiently and like scale up the time. And then the rigidity doesn't matter as much. It's like, all right, I know generally how many hours I got to run this week. I can package it together any way I want. And then my long run is my guiding compass on how I'm feeling. And that's, I think, what I tried to convey to you is like, yeah, we have this general structure of your body needs to get ready to run 4 hours in 3 months. I generally know how you need to hit that over the next, like how you need to scale that up. And we're going to get there. And so the day to day doesn't become as important. It's like you look at it more holistically. And every week you look at holistically. This is what I need to accomplish. And then the long run happens and then you adjust. Like, all right, I felt good. I felt bad. Maybe I need to give myself some more time. I have this big social event coming up. Let's have it set another benchmark for 2 weeks down the road. And then we'll check in again. And then it's like about another 2 weeks. And so that I think, hopefully you felt, it sounds like you did feel like that was really beneficial to, you know, keep the long, keep the long term picture intact, but not muddy yourself in like the short term details.
Yeah, it was huge. It was such a load off. Um, I just can't imagine like waking up and just worshiping this calendar that somebody made online. It just made
Right.
it so much easier to focus on the end goal and just be guided by your schedule that you gave me every week. So
Hmm.
big thanks. Um,
Yeah, no,
yeah,
I'm really glad it worked out for you, and you know we worked together on it. It was very collaborative, um, which was I think what made it work so well.
yeah, yeah. And the last one I have is recovery, which we kind of talked about, but you know, just seeing the power of icing, stretching, rest, and how that all plays into everything. I,
Yeah.
I've I ran in high school, and I feel like I knew all this, but never to this level, and like never have I immediately felt the effects of icing. Never have I uh, really realized how important certain stretches were. Like hip flexibility is just the most important thing for running, and I don't think I really
Hmm.
realized that until this race and even a couple years ago when I realized how inflexible my hips were. So just giving yourself time to adjust to the pains and recover on them and adjusting your schedule accordingly, it all kind of plays into itself. But that was the last thing I wrote down is like these big lessons learned.
Good. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's another thing is giving yourself the time to just do 15 minutes of hip stretches, or and it can make such a difference to just give yourself that time.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna probably publish this. I put it into a big document, but I'll share it with people and
Hmm.
they can like reach out if they have questions or anything because I don't know. I think it's fun to talk about this and if there's any other dads or just other people that want to start their first marathon, I truly think anyone can do it. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I will say that I mentioned this at the beginning, but I signed up for a 50-mile bike ride just to kind of keep the momentum going. But it's so much. It's like not as hard now that I've trained for the marathon. Granted, 50 miles is definitely respectable. I'm not trying to undermine that at all, but I could see myself running one of these once a summer just
Hmm.
have some time to enjoy the weather and push myself once a year.
Yeah, I know. I think you hit it all, man. I'm just glad we took the time to really explore race day, and then kind of that post mortem you did of the 7 things you learned is just really, really good to give yourself the, to really dive into the mental aspect of this was really, really awesome.
Thank you for listening to the High Quality Fun podcast. If you guys enjoyed this show, please give us a follow. And if you have a good story or just want to say hi, feel free to reach out to us on Instagram or YouTube. Thanks for listening.